Hey, hi, welcome to my channel. My name is Chastity. Here we talk about beauty, entertainment, celebrities, books, movies, anime, TV shows, kind of anything else that garners my attention this week. Today, we are talking about queer representation in the media and how the white gaze affects it. Now, in the early beginnings of queer media and queer representation, the queer person was always white. That is how it started. Those are the roots. And it really wasn't until the 90s and early 2000s when we started to see Black people be queer in media. But at that time, Black and brown queer people were the sassy best friends with the quippy one-liners and weren't actually full actualized characters who had any romances of their own. They were just there to help guide their white friends make better decisions because they were just so much wiser, so much more intelligent, but still somehow not real characters. Now, as we enter the 2010s, we get to see queer Black and brown people actually have romantic interests, get to be actual full-fledged characters, but there's a contingency to that the only way they can be full actualized characters is if their partner is white. That also transcends from queer media to regular media. If there is an interracial couple in media, one of them always has to be white. But today we are specifically focusing on queer media and how we have only just a handful of interracial queer couples that does not involve a white protagonist. And because we can't have any queer stories that don't directly involve white protagonists, it creates this idea that queerness is inherently white. That there is no way for there to be queerness without whiteness. The depiction of queer people have been in film since its inception, but because of censorship and as well as blatant homophobia, the representation from the beginning has not been the most desirable. In the beginning, the representation was for queer people to be jokes. Again, they really weren't fully fledged characters. They were just stereotypes and something to laugh and point at. In 1894, the Dickinson experimental sound film, also known as The Gay Brothers, is touted as the first gay film. The film depicts two men dancing with each other. The 1915 film A Woman, starring Charlie Chaplin, depicts Charlie transforming into a woman in order to toy with the affection of two men, going as far as to getting the two men to kiss. At the time, it was very normal to see gender role reversal as humor. At the time, it was very humorous just to see men act like women and to see women act like men. It was just all the rage, the most funniest thing a person could ever do. In 1919, the German film Anders als der Andern, which translates to Different from the Others, is one of the oldest films with a gay protagonist. This movie actually came out during the time when censorship in Germany had relaxed following World War I. The film depicts a violinist who commits, after being blackmailed for his sexuality. The movie actually ends with an appeal for gay tolerance by German gay rights activist Magnus Hirschfeld. 1922's Manslaughter depicts film's first erotic gay kiss, which actually ends up taking place during an orgy scene, which I absolutely love that. Also in 1922, Charles Bryant actually adapted Oscar Wilde's play Salome. A lot of queer people actually had their hand in making this film. The most notable being the bisexual lead, Alla Nazimova, and the set designer Natasha, who was rumored to possibly be her lover. Listen, I love old school Hollywood like rumors and stuff like that. I just can't imagine like what was happening during that time, especially with all the censorship and like repression. So I'm just like, rumored lover, I would like to hear more. The film also got in a lot of hot water from New York censors for suggesting that two male characters were gay. Like, it was just a suggestion, girl, but they was like, we don't care, we don't want that gay shit around here. Also, several of the female courtiers in the film were actually just men in drag, which Listen, Charles Bryant said, "We gonna make some gay shit. We gonna make it gay as possible," and I love that. 1929's Pandora's Box would feature film's first openly lesbian character. 1930s Morocco would have its leading lady dressed in a full suit and top hat while kissing another woman. 1931's Girls in Uniform is a groundbreaking German drama about a school-age girl falling in love with her female teacher. Can I just say, German drama beating my ass. For the time period, like, Germany was actually doing that thing. It was actually doing what needed to be done when it came to like queer movies and like queer representation, and having queer characters be real people and have them be on camera being in love. Now, like, not the best representation, like the violinist movie, and he, you know, ended his life in this movie with the female characters, you know, having such a huge age gap and the student teacher thing. But like, nobody was doing anything at that time when it came to true representation. Like, queerness was a gag, it was something for fun, but at least Germany was trying to like actually trying to put out narratives. So for at the time, like, these movies, great for the time. If we're thinking on like how queer representation was, this was the best we was gonna get. In 1934, Hollywood's Hays Code was created. The code set harsh guidelines for what type of content U.S. movie studios could release from 1934 to 1968. Now, the code didn't explicitly state that depictions of homosexuality should be barred, but it did state that any depiction of sexual perversion not be depicted, which at that time, homosexuality was a perversion. This would then lead to queer coding in film and television. Queer coding is the subtextual queer portrayal of characters in TV and film whose sexual orientations has not been explicitly stated. A lot of villain characters at that time were coded in queerness. These films will use their characters' quote-unquote sexual depravities as reasons for their crimes. One of the best examples of this is Silence of the Lambs, and no, we're not gonna have a discussion about it. No, there will be no back talk, just no facts are facts. 1967's Portrait of Jason is the first time we explore the Black gay identity. Portrait of Jason was filmed over a 12-hour period. Filmmaker Shirley CLARKE interviewed Jason Holloway, a Black gay sex worker and aspiring cabaret dancer. The interview has had its controversy, some people stating that it was possibly manipulative of Shirley to do this, but we don't really know what happened during that time. We don't know what deal Shirley and Jason, who we now know that's not his real name. But if you can see the film, I would highly recommend it. It is very interesting to hear Jason's life story, as well as Jason himself is a very captivating person, and to hear him speak and talk about his life and his aspiration and his goals, it is something to behold, especially when you're thinking of queer people, especially Black queer people of that time. In 1968, the Hays Code was lifted following the 60s sexual revolution. The code was then replaced with the Motion Picture Association's rating system that we know now as like G-rated, PG, PG-13, you know the system. 1975 is when camp hit the mainstream with Rocky Horror Picture Show. Rocky Horror Picture Show is a cult classic. There are still being showings of it to this day. People love that movie, and I feel like at the time, that was the first time like mainstream media was able to really be aware of what the queer community was doing at that time and being able to be let into camp. Because now the pipeline from underground to mainstream so much more easily accessible because of social media and because we all have access to each other. But like back then, like what was happening in the queer community was very hush hush and private, especially because like that is when bigotry was at its all-time high and people were getting injured and murdered. So it was like it had to be quiet. But now like the access of Blackness and queerness is so tangible to the mainstream, it's actually kind of like insane. In the early 90s, several openly gay directors became involved in independent cinema. B. Ruby Rich had coined the term new queer cinema to explain the phenomenon that was happening in the 90s. Because, like I stated, there were so many queer independent films being made at that time. Left and right, a new one was coming out. In 1993, Tom Hanks would actually end up winning an Oscar for his role in Philadelphia, portraying a lawyer who got fired from his job for having AIDS. Now, this was the first time that somebody, especially like such a mainstream actor like Tom Hanks, played a queer role. It was also the first time that someone in his position doing a film like that would actually be awarded with an Oscar. Now, this would then lead to more straight, big-named actors portraying queer characters in order to win an Oscar. And that is a whole separate video about straight people playing queer characters in order to win awards and accolades and my personal feelings of it. I feel like that's a topic that like conflicts a lot of people. Again, I just feel like the intentions of a lot of these straight actors is, I know this is how I'm going to get nominated for an Oscar and possibly win, and not I'm here to tell queer stories, especially when actual queer actors can't come out or can't portray queer characters themselves. Why trans people are not playing trans characters, and you have straight people, in my opinion, make a mockery of it. Again, it's a lot of contention amongst this topic of non-queer people playing queer people. I just feel like Tom Hanks unintentionally opened Pandora's box with that one. Because before Tom Hanks won his Oscars, the thought process was, if you are not queer and you play a queer character, your career is doomed. And that's why no one wanted to do it. Like, no one that was a big name and not queer wanted to do it. But then Tom Hanks won an Oscar and there was like, wait, we could get awards for pretending to be a little. Maybe. 2005 is when Brokeback Mountain came out, and that was the first time like a major studio had backing behind like a queer story. And Brokeback Mountain is another cult classic in queerness. That movie did numbers, and that was the first time like there was tangible proof that like queer stories could make studios money. And I do believe that is the first turning point in how studios and studios execs looked at queerness. Now let's skip a little ahead to 2017 when Moonlight won Best Picture. Listen, Moonlight is one of my favorite movies. Not my favorite queer movie, not my favorite black movie, favorite movie, period. I rewatch Moonlight at least once a year. It is so good and so amazing, and it continues to hold up, and I know it's gonna hold up for the next 20-30 years. And listen, Barry Jenkins, I love that man, and I will support anything he puts his name to, especially after seeing Moonlight. I was blown away about everything about Moonlight, and I am so happy that it won the awards it deserved. Moonlight is an amazing movie. If you have not seen it, I think it's still on Netflix. Don't quote me because Netflix takes things off like every other week. Queerness is something that has always been a part of our media. Though its beginnings are slapstick jokes and censorships, as time has changed, queer representation has changed as well. It wasn't until the 90s when we saw dynamic queer characters, although they were only in independent films. One of my favorite 90s queer movies is I'm a Cheerleader. If you have not seen But I'm a Cheerleader, please check it out. It is hilarious. It's about this cheerleader whose family is like, babes, you're gay. And she's like, what do you mean? I have a boyfriend. And all her friends and her boyfriend like, no, sweetie, you're gay. And she gets sent to like a conversion camp run by RuPaul. It is hilarious. The guy that voices like Jake Long and like Zuko is also in that movie, and it's so just bizarre to like hear his voice in this movie. Honestly, But I'm a Cheerleader is hilarious. It is a great time. I think it's like free here on YouTube with ads. If you have not seen it, I definitely recommend checking it out. Now, following the success of films like Brokeback Mountain, Hollywood was able to see how lucrative queerness could be and how lucrative it could be to sell queer stories. But with that, the representation for queerness has been less than desirable. I'm talking about those late 90s, early 2000s queer shows like Queer as Folk and The L Word that had little to no black or brown gay representation. In major cities, somehow black and brown gay people just didn't exist. And then as we move towards the late 2000s, early to mid 2010s, you had the black and brown characters who were gay, but their whole being was being the sassy gay best friend. They themselves had no storylines. They themselves had no romantic interests. And if they did, you never actually saw them like kiss their partners or go on dates. But you did see them helping their white best friend through all of their troubles and all their drama. And now as we look at queerness, and we do have more queer black and brown people being actualized characters, they only really exist in the universe of whiteness. And here's where my issue starts to come about. A lot of these black and brown characters are written in such a way that you could very easily interchange them with a white character and the story moves in the exact same way. And that is not how you write black and brown people. If you can replace them with a white person, you have not done your job writing an actualized non-white character. We very rarely, if ever, discuss the intersections of queerness and black and brownness that play a huge role in these non-white queer characters' lives. But we never touch on it. We never talk about the nuances of interracial dating. If interracial stories is what Hollywood wants to do, we have to talk about the nuances of it. Interracial dating is not this super easy thing where you just meet somebody of a different race and you meet each other's family and everything is just hunky-dory. That is not the case. It doesn't matter how, no, I get it. I'm so pro-black, they never truly get it. You never get it because you never live it. Because again, it's one thing to be like, yeah, black people get treated bad, and actually seeing it firsthand. We never delve into that. And again, we never delve into the nuances of queerness and non-whiteness. Because the default for queerness is whiteness. And in the off chance that we do actually talk about intersectionality, amongst our non-white queer characters, their experiences are actually then used as character development for our white characters to make them better people. We never actually sit with the person experiencing it, but we do get to watch the white person just become even better. It is nearly impossible to show queerness without there being a white person because, again, white people cannot identify with black people. That is just something that feels impossible. So we now have to put a white person in here for me to get it, for me to understand, and that's so unnecessary. We can have queer stories without white people. Queerness and whiteness are not synonyms, and it's time for Hollywood to understand that we can have queer stories without there being white characters. Because we find it weird when you have non-white queer characters being the only non-white people in their entire friend groups. That is very strange and odd. I think it's time, if Hollywood's going to continue to do, interracial stories, that we have them, again, without white people. Black and brown people date each other, perfectly fine. It happens every single day. That's it for my video. What are your guys' opinions on queer representation in the media? What are some of your favorite queer movies and television shows, or just queer characters, period? Song of the day is Summer Tights by DPR Live. Again, that's it for me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye, guys.